Housekeeping is certainly something that we gender share in Science and Technology Australia, and I'll certainly be doing my own fair share of that workload as the day progresses. Look, our first presentation is going to be from Simon France of Inspiring Australia. Simon's been working in the area of science engagement for the last 7 years, including management of National Science Week, and being involved with Inspiring Australia, our national strategy for science engagement from inception. So Simon has helped set up national leadership for science engagement in Australia and is currently working on the management and direction of Inspiring Australia. Simon will discuss how Inspiring Australia can help with communicating your science, and I certainly welcome Simon's input for that for us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Ross. Thanks, Katrina. Thanks for the opportunity to come and speak to you about our national strategy for science engagement. I want to share with you a recent experience I've just had and a few observations from that. I was fortunate enough recently to be in Chicago for the International Public Science Events Conference and for the AAAS annual meeting, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. The first observation that is very important is that Chicago is very cold in February, and standing at the airport in shorts, even though I had my Wallabies beanie, is not necessarily the way to go to represent Australia. Nonetheless, I was able to be there to talk about what we have here in this country. And what I found out is that what we have in Australia in terms of science engagement is actually quite unique. In fact, a number of the countries that I spoke to want what we've got. They're very jealous of the national coordination and the national strategy that is being put into place in Australia, and they want a piece of it. You see, wouldn't it be great if we could have confidence in this country that our decision makers, even if we disagreed with their decision, if we could have confidence that they were listening to the science, they were scientifically literate enough and aware enough to take on board the science in their decision making, so that even if they said and decided things that were different, we'd be confident that they took it seriously. That'd be great, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be great if our neighbours were scientifically aware enough of the issues around them that when it came to participating in public discussion, we could have confidence in them that they would take the science seriously? It'd be great if the youth of our country, as they graduated, even if they didn't decide to head into science careers, were still aware of the importance of science, that they would back basic science research, they would support their fellow students and others who did pursue science careers. That'd be great, wouldn't it, to have a country where those things would happen. That is what we've been working towards through the Inspiring Australia strategy. That is what we've been trying to put into place to help build across the country. But I tell you something else that would be great to have in Australia. It would be great to have scientists who were able to communicate their science in such a way that the people who were listening to them understood the potential and the implications and the depth of the science that they were talking about. That'd be great to have too, wouldn't it? Well, that also is what we're working towards through Inspiring Australia. I want to show you a short video now. It's just an explanation of the framework that's been put into place through Inspiring Australia to give you a bit of a picture of what's been achieved over the last few years and the sort of resources and frame that is in place to support you, the scientist, in your communication. So just have a look at this video and I'll say a few more things in a moment.
It has been observed by many that while science communication activity in Australia had continued to grow and improve, the many activities that existed were on the whole disconnected. While attracting a variety of audiences, we were not having the impact desired, and many were completely disinterested. In 2009, a series of national consultations began to ask the question, what is needed in Australia to address this situation? Was there a way of coordinating science communication in Australia to better effect? Would greater collaboration have greater impact? From those discussions emerged what is called the Inspiring Australia Strategy, a strategy designed by the science sector for the science sector. Central to the strategy was the need for national coordination and national leadership. In establishing national leadership, Inspiring Australia has been able to pull together federal government departments and agencies, state and territory governments, and key national non-government groups such as the Australian Science Communicators to form 3 leadership groups. These groups provide advice, help set direction, and work to implement the national strategy. Finally, to help lead the implementation of the strategy across the nation, we have established Inspiring Australia offices in every state and territory. They are able to take the direction set by leadership and strategy and apply it at the local level. Together, these groups and individuals provide Australia with leadership in science communication. Leadership, however, still needs advice from experts. It is important that we continue to add to and refine science communication in Australia through ongoing strategic development. To date, we have strategic recommendations in the area of media, evidence base, Indigenous engagement, marine science, and to and for the regions of the tropics and the deserts. With leadership and strategy in place and informing each other, activity across Australia can be strategically brought together, partnerships created, and new dimensions added. This provides greater depth, stability, sustainability, and impact. We have also been able to create common evaluation tools, centralize training and media skills, provide platforms for common marketing and promotion, and in all of this, share our ideas to keep improving the programs of science activities across Australia to have a greater impact on a greater audience. An audience which includes industry, decision makers of Australia, and the general public. And through a continued process of evaluation and feedback, through ongoing strategy development and leadership, Inspiring Australia wants to keep working together with you towards a scientifically engaged Australia.
What we've been able to develop is a national framework to support science engagement and science communication in Australia for all of our benefit. Questacon, the National Science and Technology Centre within the Department of Industry, has been leading this, but the leadership has been with you. That is, it's been with the science community, so that together we've been able to build what we have. What is there to offer to you? There's media training skills. How are you going with interactions with media? Is that something that you want to have some training? Well, the Australian Science Media Centre, you can go on their website and there's George Nagus, there's Robin Williams, all providing some video tips for you in your media skills. What about social media? Have you built a social media presence? Well, you can go to the same location and you can find there further training in how to develop a social media presence, if that's something of interest. There's a 3-week training course that's been developed through Inspiring Australia for you to use to work on social media presence. Have you thought about experiencing life in the newsroom? Well, there's a Scientists in Residence program that is being put into place to place scientists in newsrooms so they can understand how the media works. We have people on the ground. You heard from the video, the Inspiring Australia officers, who are there in every state and territory to work with you so that you can communicate your science more effectively, so that you can look for partners to develop your communication with and look for opportunities across the country. We've developed platforms across the country for you to be able to advertise and promote your communication activities. National Science Week's the obvious one. Put your hand up. Have you been involved in a National Science Week activity? Terrific. Did you know that currently there are 1.6 million Australians participating in National Science Week? That is an awesome thing. However, we need more. Let's double that. Let's get 10% of Australians participating in a science engagement activity. All we need to do is double the numbers of people in this room involved and we can double the amount of involvement. There are other platforms across Australia. We're developing through the Inspiring Australia managers regional hubs to promote science so that if you're in Geraldton, if you're in Coffs Harbour, if you're in Cairns, then you can form a part of that group to promote your science within your region. But it's not just about you as an individual, it's about us working collectively together. As a part of the leadership work that we've been able to do, Science and Technology Australia have been a part of forming the Science Sector Group, which is a group representing the national non-government bodies. And that group has decided that it's going to work on one key theme to promote across Australia. So that even if it's not your area of science, together we will try and make as much noise about that theme as possible so that we can show the importance of science in influencing the decisions of Australians. Get behind those things to support what we can do to raise the temperature and the engagement of science. The other thing I want you to know is we're keen to hear from you. We do have a booth up the back with Inspiring Australia. We want to know, what do we need to do next? Where do we go now? How can we continue to improve what is going on in Australia so that we can make it easier for you to communicate your science, to provide you with the training and the tools that you need? Some of the ideas that we've got going forward is we want to engage more with industry. We're thinking about engaging with science and tourism. We're contemplating how to do citizen science better. We're thinking about maybe some new science prizes or developing science clubs. They're all ways that you can think about how to get further involved in communicating the importance and the value of science in Australia. My final observation from the conference that I was at was that while it was one of the leading conferences in Australia, the communication from the scientists was actually very poor. And I just wondered what I missed because of that poor communication. What was the depth of content that I didn't quite grasp? Why was it that the communication was so poor? And it wasn't just me. As I spoke around the groups, it was very evident that a number of people thought the same. And I suppose I want to put the challenge to you. You're here for 2 days because you do want to work on that. That is a great step. But why not make sure that before you deliver any public presentation, before you go and speak to anybody, you get somebody with communication skills to work with you on what you deliver? Why not make sure that you've had somebody who's not within your science expertise listen to your piece of communication to see if they can grasp what it's about? Enjoy your 2 days, make the most of the training you receive, but don't just use it for these 2 days and the communications with policymakers and politicians. Think about it in the context of what we're doing as a nation together in working towards a scientifically engaged Australia. Thank you.
We've got a little bit of extra time up our sleeves because Bill Shorten is outside doing some media and will be slightly delayed. So Simon has agreed to take a bit of question and answers while we've got this time available. So if anybody has a question, put your hand up. We've got people with microphones, and as Katrina said earlier, please wait until you've got the microphone in your hand. But any questions?
Yeah, I would argue that we've never had scientists as engaged with the media as we have at the current time in Australia. But we're also experiencing a media that's occasionally reporting inaccurately the science. So how do we press for a more accountable media?
How do we work towards a more accountable media? The Australian Science Media Centre are the best people to answer that question. But what I've seen them doing to date is something that's very simple, is they're advertising to all of the general media journalists their science briefings. And so what they're doing is they're actually working with the media to engage them before the issues become public. So they can give behind the scenes briefings to explain the scientists with the relevant science and showcase to them what's needed and the opportunities that they have for accurate reporting. So the Australian Science Media Centre is probably the best place to go to answer that question, but that's one of the things that they are doing. And by the way, in your toolkit that is in your bag, you can find out all those training courses and the addresses of the Australian Science Media Centre.